On this Mother's Day, I think of my mother, who's been gone 10 years now. Hard to believe. But I also think about these two little babies that I've had the privilege to mother and father over the years. The first time someone wished me a happy Mother's Day, I was taken aback a little bit, and I thought to myself, now I'm not a mother. My day's coming. It's called Father's Day. But as time's gone on, I've realized that I've been a mother to these babies, and I've kissed a lot of boo-boos, and I've wiped a lot of tears, and gave lots of hugs, and all those things that mothers do. So it's been my honor and privilege to be a mother, and not very many men get to do that, so I'm very grateful. So I want to sing for you the song that I have been singing just about every night, twice a night, for the last 13 years. Baby Mine.
Welcome to Jurassic Park. Actually, welcome to the Tennessee Valley Unitarian Universalist Church, where we will be talking about spiritual evolution this morning, where religion is congruent with the fossil record, and religion and science can be partners and not competitors. Come, let us worship together.
Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea, move in the land, giving life the shape of justice. Roots hold me close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me.
Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. To dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. This is our great covenant.
Good morning. I have a story to share with you today that's adapted from one written by Kate Banks called Pup and Bear. You might be able to guess who some of the main characters in this story are, but the story begins with an owl. Do any of you know what sound an owl makes? Well, the story begins with a whoosh, when the great gray owl swooped down, screeching, "Now's the time to make the noise. Hoo, hoo." Well, that is when the Arctic wolves knew that the big freeze was coming. So they did what they always do, which is to take shelter in a big snowbank. And they listened to the wind howl and roar. Can you howl and roar like the wind? And they watched as it blew the snow into big spirals and blanketed what seemed like the whole world in a fluffy white coat. But after a time, the bitter cold wind began to turn warm, and the sun returned, and the big melt was on its way. And this was all fine except for one small wolf pup who found himself, as the ice was melting, on a small piece of ice that had broken away and was beginning to drift and float away into the ocean. The pup was frightened and didn't know what to do at first, but finally he slipped into the water and swam and swam and swam and swam until finally he reached the shore. And exhausted, he curled up in a snowbank. He was tired and he wanted his mother. Eventually he fell asleep and was woken sometime later by the feel of a wet nose against his fur. And he smelled something. He smelled a polar bear. "You are not my mother," said the pup. He was pretty frightened. And the polar bear said, "I am not your mother, but I can cuddle you and keep you safe." But the pup was still afraid. He said, "Aren't you going to eat me? Polar bears eat wolves." "Not this one," said the polar bear, shaking her head. "Come on, climb up on my back, and I'll take you to my den." So the pup cautiously reached out one paw and then climbed up, and together they traveled across the frozen tundra. When they got back to the polar bear's den, she began to lick and clean the pup, and she said, "I am not your mother, but I can feed you and keep you warm." They slept together that night in the den, and the next day, the polar bear took the pup back across the tundra. "I am not your mother," she said, "but I can show you where to catch a fish." As they walked across the tundra, they saw many other animals. They saw a walrus with big, sharp tusks, and the polar bear chuffed and bellowed at the walrus. And they saw the tracks of the seal that tried to outsmart them as it went. And finally, they got near the water's edge, and they saw the fish and the lemmings that came in and out, came and went in the wondrous wheel of life. After a while, they began to walk away from the water, and they saw a snowbank nearby, and the polar bear turned and began to roll in it, and she said, "I'm not your mother, but I can play with you. Come on." And they played, and after a while, something else happened. The pup, do you ever when you're playing start to play a little too rough? The pup began to bite at the polar bear's fur and nipped the polar bear. And the polar bear reared back and kind of growled and said, "I am not your mother, but I can scold you." And then she nuzzled the pup and tickled his tummy. And after that, they were all worn out, and so they curled up together and slept for a while. Time went on, and the days came and went, and the earth turned, and after a while there was another big freeze, and then the big melt came again, and one day the polar bear turned to the wolf, who was not a pup any longer, and said, "I am not your mother, but I know when it's time for you to go." So she nuzzled the pup, the wolf now, one more time, and the wolf nuzzled her back. And then he walked out into the wide world on his own. He walked out and he saw the midnight sun glowing on the horizon. And he did what wolves often do. Now is the time. Do you know what sounds wolves made? He began to howl. "Ow, ow, ow!" And he heard an answering cry from another wolf. It wasn't that long before the wolf was leading his own pack across the frozen tundra. But one day, he came across something unexpected. He saw a little polar bear cub shivering and huddled in a snowdrift. "Where is your mother?" he asked the polar bear cub. But the cub didn't know. "Climb on my back," said the wolf, "and I'll take you back to my den." But the cub was frightened and said, "You are not my mother. And aren't you going to eat me? Wolves eat polar bears." And the wolf said, "Not this one. I'm not your mother, but I can cuddle you and keep you warm." So what do you think the cub did? Yeah, the cub clambered up onto the wolf's back and they began to walk across the tundra. And the wolf said, "I'm not your mother, but you can stay with me until you're big enough to be on your own." And the wolf led the pack across the tundra, along the path that went round and round in the wondrous cycle of life. So I share this story this morning on Mother's Day, a day that we know is joyful for many of us, is painful for some of us, and I think for many has elements of both, particularly in this time when we are physically separated and maybe even more than usual missing those that we love. And so we honor with this story, we honor all those who mother others, all those who offer a kind of nurturing love that is available for all of us to offer to those in our lives, those near and those far. We recognize you today and hope that you find just the kind of Mother's Day that your heart needs today. Thank you.
I'd like to do 2 readings for you now. The first reading, The Womb of Stars. The womb of stars embraces us, remnant of their fiery furnaces pulse through our veins. We are the stars, the dust of the explosion cast across space. We are the earth. We breathe and live in the breath of ancient plants and beasts. Their cells nourish the land, the soil, and we build our communities on their harvest of gifts. Our fingers trace the curves carved in clay and stone by forebears unknown to us. We are a part of the great circle of humanity, gathered around the fire, the hearth, the altar. We gather anew this day to celebrate our common heritage. May we recall in gratitude all that has given us birth. By Joy Atkinson. The next reading is by Pierre Teilhard de Chardin. Someday, after we've mastered the winds, the waves, the tide, and gravity, we shall harness for God the energies of love. Then, for the second time in the history of the world, we will have discovered fire. Joy. I bring to you great news. One, Kate Benson's son, who lives in Boston, is doing well after his surgery. And 2, Reed Cooper, daughter of Andrea Yates, was named one of top 3 students of West High. Check your newsletter to see all the accolades that she deserves. Congratulations, and thank you for being a member at our church.
Hi, my name is Alandria Williams, a longtime member of Tennessee Valley UU Church, and I'm happy to share a poem with you I wrote called We Are Worthy. We are worthy, not because of what we produce, but because of who we are. We are divine bodies of light and darkness. You are not worthy because of what you offer, not because of what is in your mind, not for the support you give others, nor what you give at all. We are worthy and whole just because. In this great turning, in this great pandemic, in this radical readjustment and realignment, we are not disposable, we are needed. We are the very people that have withstood everything that has been thrown at us. And as Maya Angelou would say, still I rise. We arise from the pain. We rise from the grief. We rise from the limits people put on us and the limits we place on ourselves. We rise to be the children and the ancestors. We rise to be our true selves in relationship to our families and communities, recognizing our liberating and whole selves, honoring them and others as we strive for abundant communities, abundant lives, abundant relationships, and abundant values and cultural manifestations. You are worthiness personified. I, you, and we are worthy and desire a life where we are not fighting for our very existence. Imagine what we create if we were not always in the struggle. Imagine what we could envision if we were just allowed and just let be to go there. So tired of always having to resist, to fight, demanding, and pushing. To everyone that has the courage, the power, the ability to co-create what we want and need while rooting in what we cannot lose and who we are. You are the visionary. You are the hope. You are our ancestors' dreams. No, you might not ever end up on a list somewhere, but you are on a list in someone's heart and mind. And it's how you move in the world so people can see by example. You are the embodiment of what we need. The embodiment not of productivity, but the embodiment of radical love, care, and sanctuary. It's time. Embodiment time. Embodiment. Living one's values out loud. Let me every day live my values out loud. Let us every day live our values out loud. Embodying our values. Not the productivity quotient, beyond productivity, past productivity, true embodiment, life.
Thank you for joining us this morning. My name is Claudia Presley, and I'm the Director of Administration here at TVUUC. Today is a Share the Plate offering Sunday, which means that any contribution that comes in that is not marked as a pledge will be split between TVUUC and the Interfaith Health Clinic. In a few minutes, you will hear a video from Interfaith telling about what they do. The way you can give is to go to tvuuc.org/give, or you can text give to 73256, type in TVUUC and the amount that you would like to give. Once again, we thank you for joining us here today on this Mother's Day. If you would like to make a gift in honor or in memory of someone who has mentored you, a woman that has been special to you or your mother, please do that, and you can write that name in the comments section here. Thank you very much for joining us. Have a great day.
Interfaith Health Clinic is located in Knoxville, Tennessee, and we have been changing and saving lives in this region since 1991. We provide primary medical, general dentistry, counseling services, and pharmaceutical assistance to the low-income, working, uninsured. Over 90% of our patients make minimum wage. In our 28 years, we have served over 24,000 individuals who needed it the most.
Now, with everything going on with the coronavirus, the fact that Interfaith is still open and taking care of patients like me means so much. Their doctors and nurses are still at work every day and 2 nights a week, taking care of sick patients and making sure all their other patients have medicine and information that they need to stay healthy.
It's a wonderful place for people that are uninsured or underinsured. Interfaith is the place to come.
I was born to tend this flame. Ancestors danced and sang. What seeds now must I sow? Sow my learning in the ground, spark of spirit all around. What makes my heart so low? Oh, my love, it's time to know. Oh, my darling. Oh, oh, my darling. Oh, my love, it's time to know. When sickness is our health, when murder is our wealth, what makes to heal a soul? Oh, my love, it's time to know. Oh, my darling. Oh, oh, my darling. Oh, my love, it's time to know. The flag that makes me white takes brown and black lives. Where must my privilege go? Oh, my love, it's time to know. Oh, my darling. Oh, oh, my darling. Oh, my love, it's time to know. I was born to link this chain, roll the clouds and make it rain. What anchor must I hold? Oh, my love, it's time to know. Oh, my darling. Oh, oh, oh. Oh, my darling. Oh, my love, it's time to know.
Medieval theologians said there are two books in which we can read the Word of God. The first is the Bible, and the second is the book of nature. In the Unitarian Universalist Church, we have always trusted that second book. And that is one of the reasons that the 19th century Unitarian minister Theodore Parker referred to the earth as the oldest testament. Because we trust this book, we can trust the fossil record that is revealed to us through anthropology and archaeology. And we can trust that the earth is 4 billion years old, over 4 billion years old, instead of the 6,000 years that a more literal interpretation of the Bible would suggest. And this grounds us in accurate information, science providing the facts, but religion providing values and morals and spiritual encouragement. In the 1920s, there was an effort to start a Unitarian church here in Knoxville. And the minister of that church, Daniel Welch, was also a science teacher in the public schools. He taught biology in the school and then taught about Unitarianism at the Unitarian church. So he was a teacher of science and religion. Now you have to remember this is the 1920s when the Scopes monkey trial is happening just down the road in Dayton, where there's a biology teacher on trial for teaching the theory of evolution, teaching a doctrine contrary to the biblical story of creation. And that teacher is put on trial and found guilty. But while religion is in conflict with science just down the road, in Knoxville at the Unitarian Church, religion is in harmony. That's what Daniel Welch is teaching, that science and religion can be partners and not competitors. They can be allies and not enemies. There doesn't need to be a war between science and religion. There can be peace. Now, Rachel Held Evans, who grew up down the road in Dayton and was very familiar with the controversy over evolution versus creation, said that religion and evolution need each other. Religion needs evolution, evolution needs religion. We need our religion to grow wings when we need to fly and fins when we need to swim. We need religion to adapt with changing circumstances to help us find the good and right thing to do at any given time. Because if we can't adapt to change, then we're in danger of going extinct. Anybody who has been a part of a Unitarian Universalist congregation for any length of time knows that many of the founding fathers of this country were Unitarians, men like Thomas Jefferson and John Adams, or Universalists like Benjamin Rush. And so this is one of the things that ministers periodically talk about from the pulpit. And I remember one Sunday morning after I had spoken about this topic, someone came up to me after church and said, "You know, I am from Canada, and I believe if the people of this country had chosen peaceful evolution instead of violent revolution, then everyone would have 5 weeks vacation and universal health care." What can I say? In a Unitarian Universalist church, you're often going to hear another point of view. I know as a minister, I often hear those points of views after I give a sermon. Well, this morning I want to talk not so much about our founding fathers as our reforming mothers. This is a statue behind me. There's a larger version of it in downtown Knoxville. And the woman in the foreground is Lizzie Crozier French, who helped start a Unitarian church here in the 1920s. Indeed, the same church that Daniel Welch served as a scientist and a minister. And she was a suffragist who worked for women's right to vote. And one of the things I think about the suffragist movement is it was a movement of peaceful evolution. One of the more important moments in the suffragist movement was during World War I, when Woodrow Wilson was president, and the suffragists had to decide whether they were going to continue to protest in the midst of the war. It was very controversial, and the president was trying to keep people from protesting about other issues and focus on the war. But the suffragists decided to picket outside of the White House, and they were warned if they would picket outside of the White House, then they would be arrested and thrown into jail. So one time they picketed outside of the White House after this threat had been given, and they held up a sign that said, "Make the world safe for democracy." And they unfurled a large banner that said, "We shall fight for the things we have always held nearest our hearts, for democracy, for the right of those who submit to authority to have a voice in their own government." And a policeman started to arrest the women, and someone said, "You can't arrest those women. Those are the president's own words." That's one of the tools of peaceful evolution, is to use the words of your oppressor in favor of your own cause. That is an example of peaceful evolution. And that's what we're called to do. Woodrow Wilson was focused on a military victory overseas in World War I, and the suffragists were focused on peaceful evolution in our own country. And that's an important part of the work of the Unitarian Universalist Church, to work for peaceful evolution in whatever town and whatever place we happen to be, in whatever nation whatsoever. That's our challenge, to harness peaceful evolution. I'm reminded of the words of Teilhard de Chardin, who was both a theologian and an evolutionist. And he said that someday, after mastering the wind, the waves, the tides, and gravity, we shall harness for God the energies of love, and for the second time in the history of the world, we will have discovered fire. Do you know how I know that quote? I know that quote because my mom told it to me, and she included it in the front page of her PhD dissertation. And on Mother's Day, I'm reminded that one of the motivations of the suffragists, one of the motivations of people who work for peaceful evolution, is that mothering impulse to honor the worth and dignity of every person, to honor all God's children. In 1998, our church was a victim of a hate crime in which 2 people were killed and 8 people were injured. And in the immediate aftermath of that incident, some guy from Texas got into his car and drove all the way to Tennessee just to deliver the picture that is behind me. He dropped off the picture and left. I never even got a chance to meet him and thank him. And while I don't know his motivations, my guess is that he was sending us a message that we could meet a hateful, violent crime in the spirit of peace. And I think for the most part, we have done just that. We have fulfilled his hopes and expectations. Today, in the midst of the global pandemic, we often hear military metaphors about the challenges that we have to face together. We are told that we are facing an invisible enemy. And the implication is this is an enemy that needs to be defeated. But this is not an enemy. COVID-19 is not an enemy. COVID-19 is a disease that needs to be cured. It is a virus that needs to be prevented whenever possible, and there needs to be a treatment and a cure whenever necessary. What we need now is healing. What we need is a little less testosterone and a little more estrogen. Some of that mothering impulse, which is the power of healing and the power of peaceful evolution. If we have an invisible enemy, at this present moment, if we have an invisible enemy, it might be ignorance. It might be apathy. It might be our own indifference to taking sensible and wise precautions that will help keep everyone safe. If we have an invisible enemy, it might be our own unwillingness to change and adapt to new circumstances. So this morning, I urge you to evolve. I urge you to participate in creative evolution so that together we may overcome our apathy, overcome our indifference, overcome our ignorance, overcome our unwillingness to change. Let us all fan into flames the gifts that are within each one of us that will help us face the challenges ahead and master the power of peaceful and creative evolution. For if we do so, we will discover fire once again.
shall be our loftier race, and then the world has known shall rise with flame of freedom in their souls, and light of science in their eyes. Nation with nation, land with land, unarmed shall live as comrades free. In every mind and heart shall throb the pulse of one humanity. My friendship hitherto was sin, the broad great poets hath divine, shall burn a steadfast soul within, the clear spirit of the mind. You are shalom of loftier mold, and mighty music thrill the skies, and every night a song shall be, when on the earth is paradise.
Prophetic Church, the world awaits your liberating ministry, a ministry that cannot be contained by any bricks or mortar building, a ministry that is present wherever you are and can bring healing and peace from wherever you are right now. So may it be.
Hello! Now it's time to greet our neighbors. Please, take this opportunity. Send an emoji. Send floating hearts. Let everyone know that although we are partying at this moment, we will be with each other throughout the week in many different ways. Have a blessed week and have a joyful week. Bye.